And now it's Deborah Kobylt Live.
Hi, everybody, and thank you for joining us today on Deborah Kobylt Live. I'm so proud to introduce to you our guest, Angela Yeoh. And thank you so much for being here, Angela.
Hi, Deborah. Lovely to join you here.
Yeah, excited to talk to you about your latest role in the film, She Said, and you play Rowena Chiu. And for those who may not be familiar with the story, I'm going to say two words for you. Harvey Weinstein. But this isn't just about the Me Too movement. This is really a human interest story. So what I'd like to do is have Angela sort of describe the film, what it's about, and take it from here.
Yeah, so it's a film called She Said, which is based on the book, which was written by the New York Times journalists Jodi Kantor and Megan Twohey, who were the two journalists, investigative reporters who broke the Harvey Weinstein story in October 2017. So they were able, after months of investigation and dead ends and really persevering with this story to investigate sexual harassment in the workplace, they were able to find evidence and documentation and people willing to go on the record to talk about decades of abuse by Harvey Weinstein during his career as a producer.
It's a pretty stunning film, I have to tell you. I know the story and I know it well. And watching the film sort of brought all those stories back. But as I said earlier, this is a human interest story. It's sort of, it's a film for all of us because so many of us in different ways have to endure different abuses. And to me, you know what I got out of it? Speak out. And so many in the film were afraid to do that. Can you talk to us a little bit about that?
Yeah, I mean, it's something that it feels like in the 5 years since that happened, since the story broke and since the Me Too movement really was ignited by that article and the subsequent conversations, I feel like there's more room to discuss those things, whatever people's gender, that anyone who is in a situation of abuse or where the power dynamics mean there is some kind of oppression or exploitation, that it is hard to speak up in those situations. And I mean, something that Rowena Chiu, the survivor that I play, so she was a former assistant to Harvey Weinstein back in 1998, and she was pushed into signing quite a strict NDA to not talk about it. And there's so much stuff that's bound into it. There's so much complexity in like how people who've endured abuse can be shamed, how there can be a lot of feelings about like, or threats that can be tied up into the situation of like what fears for their safety, fears for their family, fears for how they will be judged or perceived. So there's something though with all that shame and isolation that can be really difficult. And the choice to speak out is also really difficult. But it's something that Maria Schrader, the director of She Said, had said, that something about sharing the story that there hopefully is some relief to know that you're not alone. And I think that's a feeling that a lot of people had, and which then empowered them to be able to come forward with their stories, was that they felt that they weren't alone. And it's something that I think the film addresses, that is that no one wants to necessarily be the first person or the only person to come forward, because many women have spoken up. It's not just like in the last 5 years that we've had women speak up, even though there's been a greater volume. Women who spoke up before Me Too really was ignited did often find that people might hear them but not actually do anything about it. So I do feel like now there is more scope for people to listen and have the language to talk about this and to actually step up, as you say, and make changes.
There's so much in the film that I'm sure so many of us have heard, such as, oh, did she sleep her way to the top because she wanted to get ahead and now she's, saying something about it? And I thought, gosh, that really has been the attitude of so many men and women throughout the years, that, oh, well, it's her fault. Look what she did. And now, she did it to get ahead. First of all, you shouldn't have to feel like you have to do anything like that to get ahead. It's abuse. And that's what comes out in this story. If whoever's not quite familiar with it, it brings it home in the film. And also the strength of these women. I just thought it was fantastic. Let me ask you, how did you prepare for this role? I know that you did meet with Rebecca. Is that correct?
Rowena, yes.
Rowena, I'm so sorry.
That's right. There's a lot of characters in this film. So Yeah, so I used to work as a journalist before I became an actor, so I really understood the journalism side. And as a journalist, I'm used to reaching out to people and asking if they'll speak to me. And I was fortunate that when I did reach out to Rowena, she was willing to meet with me, and she was happened to be coming to the UK to visit family because she's normally based in the US. And we were able to have a really rich conversation just talking about our experiences. I was very aware of not wanting to make her speak about things she'd already spoken about quite widely in previous interviews. And I didn't also want to make her necessarily relive any trauma unless she wanted to share it with me or felt it was important for me to understand something that maybe she hadn't said before. But yeah, it was, and one incredible thing was that she had asked me, Angela, can you find a breakfast spot for us that does an English breakfast, you know, sort of the classic fried eggs and toast sort of thing that is a bit harder to find in the US apparently. And so I picked a place that was in Soho, which is what she requested, somewhere that was outdoors, had good reviews. And I was astounded when the waiter sat us down at an outdoor area in the middle of the block. Rowena turned to me and said, do you know what that is? And she pointed across the road at a black gate. And I was like, I've got no idea. And she said, that's where Miramax used to be. The London offices of Miramax used to be there. And I was absolutely gobsmacked. And I was also really like, I had no idea. Like I really, wow. And it just, I don't know, the universe is sometimes mysterious in with these coincidences. But fortunately, she was just amused and said, I've not been here since the time when she was having those legal discussions, being pushed by lawyers to sign this NDA. And obviously Miramax is no longer there. They've not been there for a long time now. But yeah, it was just so there was that as a wink from the universe. And also just we found a lot of affinity with our experience growing up in immigrant families, in carving out a creative career when parents might not sort of see that as a safe route, especially when we're growing up in a country where there might be discrimination or difficulty. But yeah, it was really wonderful to be able to have that conversation with Rowena and to spend the time looking at what she'd already said and speaking with her to be able to hopefully serve her story with as much truth as possible in the film.
It took a lot for Rowena to be able to sit down with you, and as you said, you didn't want to ask her for the major details of the abuse that happened. But what was she like when you sat with her? Do you feel like she felt, it's out now, I'm okay? I mean, what did you get from her in terms of emotionally where she's at?
Yeah, and I suppose it's an ongoing journey because she initially was not wanting to come forward with her story, and she's spoken extensively about this, and it was a process, it was a journey, because she had not even told her own husband or family about what had happened and had kept quiet for over 20 years. And that, I mean, that's okay, over 20 years. So there's the thing that I think the film doesn't necessarily capture, just because there are so many characters or so many people who need to speak within this film, is that Rowena is actually such a warm, generous, funny, intelligent, passionate, creative person. And that's something that obviously if within the film they are sharing a slice of their life, which is the trauma, which is the thing that needed to be faced in order to have the person who did it held to account. But so I think that's something that she is really has such a sense of humor, and also is really honest about how difficult it is. It's like it's a kind of, I can only imagine, a bit of a scary thing to have one's life story put onto the big screen for millions of people to watch. And of course, it's within the creative and legal constraints of the film, so it's a dramatized version based very much on the truth of what happened for each person. So I know that she said one time on the red carpet that she had found it was a mix of emotions. Sometimes, honored that her story was chosen to be represented, and also responsibility as one of the few non-white stories to represent for the diversity of the Me Too movement, and also, some seeing your own traumatic story again and again, it brings up a mix of feelings. And I don't want to speak for her, but I know that it's not as simple as like, I'm happy I'm in the film, or I wish I hadn't done it, which I know she's glad that the story is helping to spark conversation.
Look, that's a scary moment, right? When at one point you can just stay hidden behind your door in your house, and then you make that decision to say, I'm going public with this. So thank you for being so brave, Rowena, and to all the people in the film and everyone out there who's spoken out. And I mean everyone, not just in this film, but everywhere, because it matters for all of us who've been in the situation and those of us who will be. Let's talk a little bit about the NDA, and then I want to get to you. And that is a non-disclosure agreement that she had to sign, that so many others had to sign. Imagine that. You get abused, and then you have to sign something that says, quiet about it. I can only imagine, I mean, as an attorney, right, you'd fight and say, well, you were coerced into signing something like this. But let's talk a little bit about that, your thoughts on it, and about how the movie handled that.
Yeah, because I mean, we understand when NDAs are used to protect intellectual property, or when there are sort of trade secrets that businesses might want to protect. But in this case, the use of NDAs to cover up bad behavior and potential crimes that could be prosecuted is a totally unethical use of NDAs, and it's something that people are campaigning to be eliminated, because the thing is that, and I mean, I know that Zelda Perkins and Rowena Chiu, who are both assistants at the same time to Harvey Weinstein, they've both spoken extensively about this, but they had not wanted an NDA. They had wanted to hold Harvey to account. And as young women in their early 20s had been advised, get a lawyer, and we're going to, like, the best you can get is going to be a settlement and some conditions, which they thought, well, if we can ensure that Harvey won't do this to other people, then we will sign this NDA and not speak about it any further. But these were long negotiations that went into the night, and there was a huge power differential in that room, which made it really questionable whether, and how much money were these lawyers being paid. I mean, it's to make it clear that this film is not just about Harvey Weinstein, the abuser, but also all the people who enabled him and supported him and who took his money to help him cover up decades of abuse.
Yeah. Let's talk about you a little bit. You were, or I always like to say are, still a journalist, because I think once a journalist, always a journalist, right? We're very curious people. Tell us about you. You've had quite a distinguished career as a journalist, and then deciding to become an actress. And there's a lot of buzz about you, okay, Angela, as well as this film. I'm hearing some Oscar buzz about the film. We all are. And about you. It's just a phenomenal breakout actress, particularly in this film. So let's talk about you and your career, please.
Yeah, I think as a young person, I really loved stories as a way of me, I guess, always being really curious about the world and understanding the power of stories to imagine how things can be different. So I think I've always loved telling stories and getting at the truth. And that's what I felt like I did as a journalist. So I started in Australia with the ABC, which is the public broadcaster there, working in radio and TV news. I freelanced in Brazil, working for newspaper and radio. I worked for France 24 in Paris, which is an international news channel when it was first starting out. And I also worked for the Wall Street Journal in Beijing, almost worked for the New York Times. It was between the two of them. They both offered me a visa to work in China as a video reporter, making short documentaries. And at the time, the Wall Street Journal had more of a focus on doing long form and investigative work, which is what I was most interested in. And so I went with them. And then, as we know, management changes, and sometimes these priorities change. And so I ended up interviewing again with the New York Times shortly before I decided to move away from journalism temporarily. I do agree with you, Deborah, that I think there's something about journalism in its creativity and the way we're sort of seeking to understand the world, which doesn't ever go away. So I do miss that. And I do get to do that in a sense as an actor as well. So I decided to go and train and get some creative skills to tell stories, because I think documentaries are really powerful, but they can be quite hard to do if you don't have the right person or place to shoot the film. So I just was aware that there were subjects I wanted to tell stories about that could be approached perhaps more powerfully through fiction and still get at the truth. I could say more, but I'm aware of, that's it in a nutshell. It's been quite a journey, and I do appreciate there's been a lot of, I kind of didn't really set out to, I couldn't have dreamt that I would have been in such an amazing film. And I feel like there's a lot that has just come to me as I keep working hard and staying open to what I'm meant to do here in this world, which we're all figuring out, I suppose.
I believe that when you first auditioned for the film, you weren't quite sure what you were reading for. Is that correct? Could you tell us a little bit about that? And you were up against a lot of terrific candidates. And I sometimes wonder, as I was researching about you, I thought, well, aside from the fact that you are a terrific actress, trained, but I often wonder too, the journalism background, how interesting that you brought all of that to the table. But what was it like auditioning for this? And then when you found out you got the part, I mean, how extraordinary.
Yeah, so in a sense, the project found me because I heard about it through a WhatsApp group for East Asian creatives. And they said that Francine Maisler, who's an amazing casting director in the US, was looking for British East Asian actors of a certain age or casting bracket. And when they invited me to audition, and it was a dummy scene. I wasn't told the director, the title, or the genre. They were being very confidential about it. But I thought if Francine Maisler's casting it, it's probably something special. So they said, just your natural instincts. It was a dummy scene where a woman was describing a very difficult story, including an attempted suicide to a stranger, which is essentially what my character does in the film. And it felt like a lot of what was in between the words was what was important. So what was going through the character's mind as they're trying to find the words to articulate what's happened to them. And also knowing that the other person might not understand. There's a lot that was wrapped up in it. And as soon as I found, I just had to surrender. I mean, this is what I do with all my auditions these days, is surrender the outcome to the universe. And if I'm the right actor to bring this character to life, then I will show up and serve it as best I can. And when I found out it was Maria Schrader who was directing it, her work on Unorthodox is just so beautiful. I'm really inspired by her journey from being an actor to becoming a director. So I was excited to meet with her. I immediately got the book and read it from cover to cover. I hadn't gotten around to reading it yet, and super inspiring. And I just was like, as someone who feels that journalism is still really misunderstood, as someone who has experienced abuse and I know how abuse is really misunderstood, I was like, if I can do anything to serve this project, I will work my hardest and do my utmost to do that. So yeah, I mean, it was I have to admit that it was a little bit terrifying at times to go, oh wow, like the importance of this project, how the caliber of the actors that are involved in this and the caliber of the team. There was a part of me that going, I really hope that what I bring can be alongside that, and trusting as well that film's a collaboration. So I didn't need to do it all on my own, and also I needed to do as much as I could to be together with that team and do our best for this film.
A wonderful team, the writer, the director, all female. What was it like on the set for all of you? The connection, the collaboration. Could you describe it for us?
Yeah, it was very collaborative, and I feel that that's one of the beautiful things about film. And I've also been on sets that have had not as nice an energy, where there's sometimes been more shouting than is necessary. And this set was really, really sensitive, I feel, and really collaborative and attentive. I feel like everyone who was involved, I experienced, really cared about making sure that we did it right. And that included, being able to discuss the script and being able to have an exchange on whether we had the right words to reflect Rowena's truth, or how were we representing the experience of being in an immigrant family, to make sure that because obviously, again, like the film condenses a month-long investigation into 2 hours. And in each scene, we're condensing what is quite a complex experience for each survivor into just a few minutes. So how could I ensure that those words would, but it was wonderful working with Zoe Kazan, who I do my scene with, and I got to meet with Dee Dee Gardner as well. And it was really a collaborative, thoughtful, and powerful set atmosphere, I feel.
I also feel like as time goes on, as women, more than ever, we're supporting one another. There was a time where it was either me or her. Do you know what I mean? Like, I'm going to get the job or she's going to get the job. So we have to sort of fight for that. I really feel like time has passed, and now we show up and we support. At least I'm sure it's in your environment, and I know in mine. We're there to really help push each other along, and I think it's because of all the brave people that have come before us to speak out and speak their truth. It's so critical, because you mentioned you had been the survivor of abuse. I have as well. And I chose not to say anything publicly. And sometimes I wonder, gosh, should I have? Because he's still a network anchor. And I think, oh my goodness, I just decided at a young age to let it go. But whenever I see him, I think one day, but I didn't. So I want to talk a little bit about that with you. And did you bring some of that with you when you were acting, when you were doing the role, when you were tapping into Rowena, some of your own experience?
Yeah. I think there's something about all the questioning, or the sort of the self-doubt about like what could I have done differently, or sort of it's like the psychological element of abuse, which I think is really misunderstood. I think it's quite clear cut that physical and sexual abuse is very wrong.
Yes.
I think often in order to wrapped up in that, or in order as preceding that, there's psychological and emotional abuse and manipulation that is tied into it, which makes it really hard. It's hard to unpick it because you can't see the effects of that. We can't.
True.
It's harder to. It's like a lot of. So I knew that it was complex, and I knew that there's a weight to it, and some shame as well, and potentially self blame, or self-doubt, and a real desire to be understood without knowing if the other person will understand. So I know I've definitely had women not understand because they hadn't experienced it. I mean, it's unfortunate. I had one when I was discussing, like, as a storyteller, how can we shine a light on power dynamics in abusive relationships? Someone had said to me, I was quite shocked at the time. She said to me, Angela, you can't call it abuse if the person stayed. And I was like, this is, you really don't understand. And I know that everyone has to take responsibility in the end, but there's a lot, it's not so easy as just going, oh, someone's treated me badly, so I'm going to leave. There's a lot more in it. There are sometimes power dynamics. There's sometimes an ongoing relationship that complicates things. So,
yeah, I just want to say that came out in She Said, power dynamics, all that. So very well put, really. Let's talk a little bit about where you are now. I mean, first of all, I know where you are now. You're in London, you were telling me, and you've got a stage behind you, right? So you've been doing some theater work, and also what's next up for you? Please tell us.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the actors that I admire the most, a lot of them do theater, film, and TV. So I'm really fortunate right now that I'm working with an incredible director, workshopping a new play. So we're working on a new Australian play for the National Theatre, which is the incredible theatre here in London. So that's what, hence this lovely red curtain behind me. And I have also been fortunate to work on a TV series, a sci-fi series called Wool, which will be out on Apple TV next year. Again, a phenomenal team, a phenomenal cast. Rebecca Ferguson is the lead on that, and she was wonderful to work with. So I can't say too much more. I mean, it's based on, it's called Wool, and it's based on the Silo trilogy, which is a book, which are books that are already out there. But of course, as with any adaptation, there are some changes to the characters and to how the story unfolds. But yeah, I feel really optimistic about getting these wonderful opportunities with amazing collaborators to be hopefully telling stories that have a positive impact.
Thank you so much for joining us. Is there anything you'd like to tell our audience before we let you go? And once again, Oscar buzz on this, everybody. Please go see the film. This is not just sort of a film you want to take your girlfriends to. My husband loved it. We all loved it. I've been spreading it out with all of our friends. It's a terrific human interest story. I want to be very clear about that. So congrats on that, the Oscar buzz about this film and about you. But any parting words?
Yeah, as you say, you put it really well. I feel like this is a film and a conversation that we need everyone to get involved with. And the film, even though the film is challenging, it is a journey that is gripping, and we get to see women working together in a way that I feel like we don't see enough. What you were saying earlier about historically women being pitted against each other, I feel like that has served a certain system for a long time. And how do we overcome that and really just see each other as human beings and have that basic respect that means that we can work together and the world can be better for everyone. It's I've been really touched by male friends who've gone to see the film who have been outraged and really inspired to find ways to use their privilege to empower others. And there's a way of doing that isn't hopefully patronizing or isn't sort of stepping in and trying to save someone, because that isn't helpful and often diminishes the other person. But I'm really hopeful that the film will reach a lot of people and inspire them to do their part to build a healthier and more balanced world for all of us.
Oh, beautiful. So well said, Angela. Thank you so much again for joining us. And I hope to meet up with you when you're back in the States. And congratulations. Yeah, congrats on all the success. Good luck with the play. It's probably going to be terrific, the performance. I just loved it when I first saw you pop up on Zoom, and I knew exactly where you were at the theater. And what a beautiful place to be talking to us from. So thank you so much. And everybody, you can find our interview on Deborah Kobylt Live on all platforms, YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, and then on all audio platforms, on Apple, Amazon, iHeart, and just about anywhere you get your podcasts, you'll find us. So thank you so much. Oh, and I want to mention thank you to my colleagues in Los Angeles for nominating me as Journalist of the Year. And I find out this weekend, I'll be going to the Gala at Universal. So thank you very much. So fingers crossed. So thanks again for joining us, and much love. See you next time. Bye-bye.